I was looking up just like voice stuff, just like how to, like work with voice and like enunciation and stuff like that. 'Cause that's something I need to work on. And there was a video. It was Tom Hanks, so whatever about Tom Hanks, but as an actor, like high quality stuff.
Phenomenal.
So he was like
top 5 as an actor, but
yeah, he was with maybe like Tom. Yeah, I think it was Tom Hall and a bunch of other people.
Like, OJ Simpson still ran for 3,000 yards.
That's true. OJ is still the juice.
Yeah, maybe not the best with stress control. The Bridge Podcast. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Sean Nixon.
And I am your co-host, Jonathan Matthew. Sunday, The Bridge.
Thursday Bridge.
Live.
Probably being posted
Thursday.
on a Monday.
I
love it.
That's a nice fish you got there, buddy.
Thanks, man. This is a tropical yellow-eyed bluefish.
Ah, very apt description.
I like art like that, though, for real. Whatever you would call this style.
Impressionistic, kind of where it's not like an actual fish, but just kind of like the idea of it.
Impressed.
It's kind of like if you were like, because you're nearsighted, right? Are you nearsighted like me?
I'm fucking no-sighted. This is my only sight. I see better like this.
Yeah. With 3D eyes, though, like you take it off and things are blurry, you can see like the outline and kind of
right.
That's why it
makes
right?
sense. Sure.
Yeah, so that's what they call that.
That totally makes. See, now I'm learning, because that's how I get around. Like if I'm at the gym or something like that and somebody's 20, 50 feet away, I can't see shit. So I couldn't recognize them. So I'm always looking for context clues and like outfits and the way people walk and shit like that. Like that's what I pick
interesting.
Up. Movement, energy, and like outfits and style and shit like that.
It's kind of like a bat using echolocation. You're just kind of using other senses to.
I'm a fucking dolphin, fucking echolocating in this motherfucker, because actual face I can't see until you're close enough.
That's crazy.
I love it. So today, speaking of senses, people only tell you got 5 senses, and the ancient Hindus, ancient Egyptians had over 100. And a lot of times we don't tap into the internal ones, and we always talk about proprioception being the 6th sense, your body's awareness of movement and space, and then intuition and all these things. And the inner senses have you deal with different emotions. And that's the whole game that we're playing in this 3-dimensional, 3rd density fucking Earth matrix realm, is how you can transmute and deal with energy and emotions. So today we're going to talk about, I don't know if we want to call it like grief in general or grief counseling, but I'm going to throw it over to you, because we've all experienced some type of loss or grief in our lives. And you, amongst your many different types of charity work that you've done, have just started some grief counseling, helping out some kids. So explain that to everybody.
Yeah. So it's, the non-for-profit organization is called Good Grief, and it's literally been right next to my apartment complex for forever, for a long time now. And I've driven past it so many times. And I was driving back this couple of months ago, like in June. And I was just kind of looking for, at that time, like another way, just like to help. That I can vote. Right now, I volunteer in an animal shelter regularly, so that's just what I do now. I've done different stuff in the past, but I was kind of looking for something to help in some way, and actually in kind of a counseling capacity, actually. And I'm driving past it, and I'm like, good grief. Like, what is, because it's right next to also like a funeral parlor home to the thing, which makes sense. So I've seen that, and I'm like, that's, for one, I like playing words. So I was like, oh, I like puns. Okay, good grief. So I looked into it, and it's like a grief counseling place. Like, what they do a lot of work with kids, and the people who create it, very, 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 very cool philosophy and system. So I just decided to sign up to become a grief counselor, did some training, which is really, really great. And yesterday or last night, so Wednesday, the 15th, was my first session. And a bulk of the work is with kids, right? And that's kids ranging from like 3 to 5, like very young kids, all the way to young adults. And then there's work with adults as well. It's really anybody who's lost anyone, right? So it could be, if it's a kid, they lose a parent, lose a sibling. If it's a parent or like a legal guardian, you lose a spouse or a child. Those are all very different dynamics to work with. Um, Different ages are very different. So I end up working with the teen groups. That's who I had yesterday. So like ninth graders, 12th graders, essentially. I don't think they have eighth graders in there. And that's a very interesting time in life without loss, right? That just in general, like there's just a lot going on there. Um, and I had my first session last night with three young girls. And it was really interesting to talk because I've worked with teenagers as sports performance coach, strength coach in different capacities over the last 7 years or so, like that, 8 years now, but never in this kind of context. And it's very, very different, especially because like I experienced loss when I was very young, like 6 years old, and different losses throughout my life. As loss as a teenager, also went through my own trouble with kind of depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and some dark spaces during my teens that I wasn't really even prepared to handle. Um, and the philosophy behind good grief is in the title, right? It's that the idea of grief is good. It's a good, normal, it's a healthy and definitely even necessary part of loss. And a lot of our culture, society tends to kind of diminish that, or we're a very suppressive culture. Not everybody, but as a whole, because we're very like go go go, next thing, forward thinking, future thinking, and we have this very linear kind of thought process behind grief, and that's due in part to this famous researcher who did a lot of great work, but created a kind of a limited model of the 5 stages of grief, which you've probably heard of, right? So that's your denial, your anger, your bargaining, your depression, your acceptance. And with that, what that kind of does is it kind of creates this like timetable and creates this like end goal of like when things are done. And like me
I
and
want to
you
get to the
both,
next level. I want to get to the next step.
yeah. And that's like in all the conversations and podcasts we've had, like that idea is just in the human mind of like, oh, I'm getting to my end point, whether that be health and fitness, right? Whether that be personal growth, your career, just life existence in general, right? There's no end and no beginning. And then same thing with grief, right? The loss can come in waves. So, but it was fascinating to talk to some of these kids. One, I'm not going to mention names, but some girl, like two of the girls lost siblings that are very close in age, like other teenagers. And then one girl lost her mom and had lived with her stepmom and father. And like I never talked to anybody about any of my issues until my 20s, to like my mid 20s, really, until like early mid 20s. And here these like 13-year-olds, 16-year-olds in this space, coming here and like opening up. And a couple of the girls had been there before, like they'd been there last year to the organization, so they knew each other and they kind of been through it before. But I could see the difference in them because one of the girls was brand new, like, and just lost somebody this past summer, like very, very fresh. And you could kind of tell it was her first time talking to anybody about this. The other two, you could tell, had talked to about it before, and they were more, but it was crazy because one of them was 14, the other one's 16, and of how much they've kind of learned about the process already, and just having gone through this and being able to talk about it in a safe space. Because it's a very vulnerable thing to talk about loss. It's very vulnerable to feel like you are sad, you're helpless, kind of hopeless, right? Because I'm supposed to be, I'm supposed to move on. I'm supposed to find acceptance and be, accept it and then go forward. And like, that's how it's supposed to be.
You also
Or
feel
kids.
alone and lonely as far as you maybe it's just me, but I think this is a common theme. You feel like I'm the only person that this has ever happened to, and why is this happening to me? And you feel like you're alone and unique in your depression and sorrow and grief.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. Because again, for a lot of them, it's like their first major loss. And again, like we talk about, these are teenagers, so they're just dealing with handling emotions that are heavy for the first time really ever. Because like I was 6 when my dad passed away, which is very different than being a teenager. So the processing really wasn't there at the level I would have been at 13 or 14. But you're right, like a lot of them felt alone. One one of the girls talked about like having difficulty, trusting and feeling and like that, right? So, but yeah, it's a heavy load to deal with that kind of stuff.
So you address the 5-step, like, what's it called, like the academia type of model, which makes sense on a thesis and in a book, but in reality, we know time and energy don't always line up, and they're not linear processes. Does Good Grief give you a formula to work with, or
Yes. So what we do is with the kids, it's more of really just like the first time, like the first day. So really we're just an icebreaker. We just literally played a game, and then the conversation evolved. It's like very, very free flowing. Because again, it's like a vulnerable experience, and I can't talk too much about it because it's a personal thing and confidentiality and whatnot. But yeah, just kind of letting them feel comfortable, just like opening up and.
So all right, the first 2 questions, because I got 100 things, but first questions. Do they come out like on some Alcoholics Anonymous type of shit and identify themselves by their loss and like state that as their first thing that they attach to and say in the group setting, where they're like, this is who I lost and this is how I'm feeling type of thing? Or it just comes up in conversation?
So there's a part of the whole process that I'm not a part of, like the facilitators, what I'm called, I'm not a part of, where they kind of have this, opening ritual where you have the option to like state your name and who your person is, right? Because it's not always like a family member sometimes, and that person may actually not even be that close, but it's so. But then they have the option to pass too, so like they don't have to do it. There's never any force, anything like that. But yeah, but they have the opportunity to say who their person is and
Before they get to your group.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have some information, but it's not like they're announcing it and attaching and identifying with their trauma.
Yeah, and the goal is not to like fix them, right? I'm not here to. I'm not a therapist. They're they're not in therapy. This is just like a safe space where we get to hang out. If something comes up, it comes up, and if it feels, as like discerning as I am, like it feels like that's something that can expand on, or I can see that maybe they need help expanding on it too, because their kids still kind of find their words, or the group gets involved, and it's very cool to see like some of the kids who've been through it, but be able to like help the other kids too, because that's like
that's what
creates
it's about.
a really strong empathy,
and that's part of their grieving process. It's helping the next person up the hill. That's fucking great. So second question is, did you share, I'm sure you don't have to, but did you share your personal stories and some of your loss, not only for empathy with the group, but just to throw it out there?
No. So the philosophy there is just to keep it entirely about them. So like the less they know about me, I'm really just essentially being a mirror.
Sure.
And again, like just because of the setting, right? This is very different than like a private therapy session, or and that's just the philosophy there, is just to keep it with them, back on them.
Sense. My problem where one-on-one talk therapy sitting on the couch didn't work is because not only was I fucking super guarded and not ready for it, and it's not the appropriate setting for me, so not to blame anybody else, but I kept thinking and even saying to the guy, you don't fucking know shit. You haven't been through shit. You haven't been through what I've been through. And this is clearly my anger and my depression coming out at the time. But I was like, how are you going to fucking counsel me when you don't know what I've been through? But I think your energy is enough of a presence to just keep the group flowing.
Yeah. And then that's like that's a line you kind of walk as if you're going to be a counselor or coach, is like, how much when is it appropriate to tell my story? When is it not appropriate?
Certainly not day one.
Yeah, certainly not day one, right?
I like that, because there may be a time where like they're looking for that and you can slip it in appropriately, but you're certainly not going to be like, let me tell you, young kids.
Yeah, because then it's about me, right? So
no, of course not. Because that reminds me of the first, maybe even the first spiritual lesson I ever got. I suffered quite a bit of loss in my teens as well, which I don't think it's a fucking coincidence that you got paired up with the teens. I think this is all perfect. I think that's the perfect time that you need to, like you said, younger kids is different, and not that adults don't have trauma, but I think the teenage years is like the not make or break, but like a real fork in the road in life.
Well, it's a major formative experience. So like what you form there carries on potentially for the rest of your life, right?
Big time. And I had a lot of loss in my teens as far as people and etc. So the first spiritual lesson I ever digested properly, and that really resonated with me, and that I got from a friend of mine, was my first little story of Buddhism. And it was a story after I'm grieving with, well, I might as well tell everybody. When I was, how old was I? 16? My person that was a brother to me died, killed himself. And then exactly a year later, in the same exact month, my best friend at the time's brother killed himself in the same manner, in the same way, in the same month. And then a year later, my dad killed himself. And so that's what? 16 17,
to 18.
Yeah, back to back to back. And so a friend of mine, Andrew McCumber, said to me, well, there's a story about the Buddha, and this lady is crying and she's hysterical and she's, oh my God, I lost my baby. My son died. I don't know what to do. Woe is me. And she's rightfully so, grieving and depressed and having a breakdown. And she feels like she's alone and she's the only one that this has ever happened to. And the Buddha goes, okay, I'll make you a deal. He goes, you go around the village and you bring to me a grain of salt from a house who's never felt your loss, the same feeling you're feeling now, and come back to me in the morning. And she comes back tomorrow with no salt. And she goes, I understand now. And that hit me so hard. I was like, oh, everybody, I'm out here on my fucking pity party island. Not that things don't happen, but I'm clearly not dealing with this energy properly. Literally just felt alone. Like, why does this keep happening to me over and over again? What the fuck did I do to deserve this? And it's just the stories. That was like the beginning of a decade plus of the story. And just me feeding into every story. It must be true. It's in my head.
Get the Looney Tunes in there, just like smacking each other on the head. Yeah.
Dude, all day, back and forth, fucking Tom and Jerry in my head. And I believe both fucking stories. And to be continued next week. Beep, 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 beep. That's all, folks. Next week. And so then I'm like, oh, shit. Everybody has dealt with some kind of loss. So, like, I could at least stop the story in my head that's not true of, oh, this only happens to me.
Yeah.
That helped a lot.
I think as like a teenager, right, that's like identity forming. Identity forms throughout your whole life, obviously, of course, but teenager specifically, so is your identity. So I think that feels like when it's like, well, why is this happening to me? It's really kind of relating this, like, well, why is my identity being shaped in this way? Like, why is this happening to me? Like, why am I going to be this person who had these things happen to? It's because now you're going through several different crises. It's just not just a loss, but it's a loss of identity too. And there's like so much. We talked about in our last episode, like groundlessness there, right? There's so much lack of stability and
literally,
like,
because then my mom goes bankrupt and the bank takes the house away and shit because my dad wasn't there to pay the bills and all that. So it was like
loss, right?
Years of nightmares.
Just constant loss, right?
Oh yeah.
So what were some things that you said? Well, that Buddha story obviously changed. That's a dope story.
It was the first domino that flicked to show me that all of Christianity isn't all corruption and pedophiles and manipulation and lies and money scams, and that there is a spiritual path. I didn't know shit from, like, maybe I knew there was Jewish people. The only way that I knew there was Christian people was what I said that all priests are this and all this or that and whatever, which is obviously not true. It does exist, but it's not all, and it's not completely true. And then the only Muslim people I knew at the time was fucking Fox News saying that they're all bad.
Yeah.
Because of the propaganda that they're digging up to keep generational wars going in the Middle East. So I didn't know, here's my point. I didn't know there was anything other than Christianity, hardcore Catholicism and hardcore atheism. I thought were my only two choices at the time. Just out of ignorance. Just out of yikes.
Pick two.
Yikes, because both of those roads, two dead end roads. Right?
Yeah.
And so that was I was like, Buddhism. I'm like, that's fucking interesting.
Buddha?
Goddamn Buddha. I was like, this guy knows his shit.
You mean that fat guy at the Chinese restaurant who's always laughing?
Yeah, old fat guy hitting that Chinese fortune cookies knows his shit. Goddamn. And so I was like, fuck, I know how to read. I can read this shit. Next thing you know, balls deep in Buddha. And I really resonated.
Balls deep in Buddha.
I resonated with the teachings. And the number one thing that I resonated with, obviously that was the first story, but the biggest tenet was he didn't say to worship anybody, specifically himself.
No.
He was just like, here's some fucking things that I learned sitting under a tree, letting go of my issues. And we all got issues. And now we're here. And here's some shit that I figured out. Maybe it'll work for you. See you later. Have a good day. And there wasn't like money involved or worshiping.
Just rose petals or like peach blossom petals fly around him. He disappears.
Yeah. They were falling out.
Master Oogway just floats away.
Beautiful. And so just opening the door that there wasn't only 2 dead-end roads. There's infinite roads. And some of them are fucking really beneficial.
Yeah.
Because that led to years and years of spiritual texts and videos and experimentations and
did you kind of
dives
like
into the inner world?
Yeah, and like retrospect now, obviously, have you like gone back and seen the points where you were maybe like at those different stages, right? Like denial and anger and like all those are happening, right? But it wasn't like a linear thing for you. Like
no, never linear.
Some of it was all at the same time. Some of it was like
let's go through the steps because it's so funny because I remember the denial.
And not that these things aren't helpful tools along the path of grief as an understanding.
Oh no, it's real. It's just the problem is people don't understand, like you said, timeline, right? And linear, it being like, okay, well,
and it puts an expectation on someone's loss.
Step 2 was anger. I'm done with that.
All right.
Moving on to the next one on Monday morning. Fucking no, it's not like that at all. But so denial, I remember that shit. Like, no way is this fucking happening. Like, saw it with my eyes and didn't believe it.
Yeah.
Denial. That's wild. That stage was very quick. Anger is number 2.
Anger is number 2.
That one was not very quick. That one I've been carrying around for quite some time, and it's really been recently I've been really working on patience, and that is a magical pill. Let me tell you what, patience is
the patience
to throw cold water on your hot anger.
RX? Yeah.
Because anger is just spicy fear. Like I always say that I'm not afraid of any person. I'm not afraid of this. I've done so much meditation and psychedelic journeys. I'm not afraid of death even. I'm not afraid of this. I'm not afraid. That's not the way to not be afraid. And so, but I'm angry. So I'm afraid of something and I'm expressing that fear through anger.
Through anger is the channel. Yeah.
Then what's number 3?
That is bargaining. This is just kind of reconciling the situation, like the coulda, shoulda, wouldas a lot of the times.
Oh, wow. All the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, because I had opportunities for every one of them that I could discuss some of them briefly. But I was thinking the bargaining was kind of more like bargaining with myself. Like, you ain't going to live till 30 anyway, because look at all these other examples. So let's just fucking eat pizza every day, become obese, smoke 2 packs of cigarettes, do every drug that's not nailed down. Like, you think Hunter Biden was the first one snorting Parmesan off the fucking floor, dude?
Guys,
snorted everything off of every floor.
There was a generation called the 80s for you youngins, okay?
Amateurs, man. Goddamn kids these days. And but the bargaining for me was like, so, man, my brother John, we were hanging out, and I remember Frankie, who was a wrestler, broke his ankle or something. So he had a wheelchair. And Johnny stole his wheelchair, and he was doing fucking popping wheelies in Evan Thiel's fucking driveway, and he was doing like spins and 360s on the wheelchair or whatever. And we were gonna go to not the prom. What's that first bullshit called? In October, homecoming dance.
Homecoming,
right?
Yeah.
And so everybody went separate ways after smoking our after-school blunt in the fucking driveway, and went separate ways to go home and shower and meet back up at, I think, Anthony's house. Just throwing names out, first names, not that anybody knows, but if you know, you know. And we were supposed to meet back, pick him up to go there. And then when we went to pick him up to go there, his mom was upset, to say the least, right? So not to get into that story of what we saw, but the point is, your brain starts bargaining immediately. We should have never left him. Fucking, he did this in the fucking 2-hour period that we were just with him, and we had plans tonight. Like, what the fuck? And there's a whole weird story that isn't even worth bringing up at the time, bringing up now, of like why and what happened or whatever. But point being, for bargaining, there was so much bargaining of we shouldn't have left them, we should have did this, we should have, could have, would have. And we know when you should all over yourself, you don't get anywhere, because should is just a judgment, and it's a judgment of yourself in the past, and you can't change the past. And then Nick, who was my best friend at the time, Anthony's brother, we were smoking with him around the corner, smoking a blunt around the corner of his house. He seemed fine, completely fine. And the next morning, when he killed himself, the suicide note, he was not fine. And there was a very specific reason that we all knew, that we were all ignorant to the fact that you would have to address something like that.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of shoulda, coulda, woulda there as well.
Yeah.
And then once again, that story is not worth telling, because not only is it long and not cool, but that would out some people, and it doesn't even matter. But point being is, I was with him fucking 12 hours before he did it. And same thing with John. I was with him 2 hours before, an hour before he did it. And then the third one is the best one. My dad called me for help, and like said pretty much what he was going to do. And he was certainly not in a right state of mind right before he was about to shoot himself. And he left me a voicemail that I chose not to call back, because I was too busy doing and selling drugs. And I didn't want to deal with it. Even if I wasn't busy doing something that I should have been doing anyway or whatever, I didn't know how nor want to deal with it. And I kind of was like, you weren't there for me type of shit, so I'm not calling you back on this clearly a direct cry for help voicemail.
Yeah.
And that haunted me for a while, among other things with that. But point is, none of that. So that was all the bargaining, and none of that should even matters. And I'm over all that. So what's step 4?
Depression.
Oh, well, fucking, I invented that. And once again, depression is kind of just anger that you now turn inward towards yourself, because the bargaining, the anger is fear that you're expressing outward in some spicy fear reaction. The bargaining is like, how do I get out of this anger? I don't know. And then you just shit all over yourself. And then so that anger comes back internally, and that's just rage turned inward, and anger turned inward is depression. So that's a nice, fun, clinical term for being real fucked up about hanging on to stuff in the past.
Yeah, depression is just like a gigantic spectrum of what that even means, right? So like that's
big
just like
fishing net of bullshit.
Like depression and anxiety are like super general terms that you can be diagnosed with, but it's not like you can't diagnose what this specific issue is, because you don't know. The root of the issue could be a million different things, and the process of it can be a million different ways, right?
And for me, the answer to solving number 4, is dissolving, let's say, because you don't solve problems, but you can dissolve them, is letting go. And I was actually doing that this morning, is, dude, I've told it to you a million times. And when I go away from it and I try all this other fancy shit and I go back to it, the mantra of breathing in and saying let, and breathing out and saying go. And I breathe in love, and I breathe out the negativity, and I breathe in the good shit, and I exhale the bad shit in just a mantra over and over again. Let go. Let go. And sometimes like something, a blockage of abundance, a blockage of love, a depression, an anxiety, whatever, all it is stories that are running. It doesn't necessarily mean they're true. So you're just breathing in the air and letting it go, and breathing in the air and letting it go. And I'm telling you, that's what helped dissolve a lot of that.
Yeah.
So what's number 5? Acceptance.
Yeah.
Well, awareness and acceptance are the keys to moving forward on anything.
Yeah, I'd say awareness of the first 4 leads you to that 5th one, right? So we always talk about self-awareness being like the first, but one of the most pivotal components of acceptance.
Because now I'm at so much acceptance. I'm grateful for everything that happened, because it was totally worth it for me to go through all that, because it made me who I am today, which sounds fucking cliche, but I would not have looked like this, sounded like this, felt like this, and helped all the people that I've helped, and help all the people that I'm going to help, and been really shown by the God or the universe or whatever what my purpose and mission in life is, if it wasn't for all that tragedy, adversity, and loss. So I'm grateful for it, which is crazy. This whole story that I took you through, 15 years of bullshit, more than that, but like these 15 years of stories that I just told, because the kids that you're working with are still on that day one. So to tell them, one day you're going to be grateful for it, You can't say it like that.
It doesn't help them either, right?
So instead of going through the suicide attempts, the obesity, the depression, the drug addiction, and all the crazy shit that I went through, you're there to kind of, I don't want to say nip the trauma at the bud, but get them expressing it more instead of bottling it up and taking it out.
Well, yeah, this space is just kind of like a release valve for a lot of that pressure that's building up, so that pipe doesn't explode in a couple of years when it hasn't had a chance to have that outlet, right?
Well said. So enough about, I was rambling for way too long. Let's talk about the kids more.
Well, I just want to bring up too, because it relates directly back to our last episode, or one of our previous episodes, is the wounded healer, that kind of archetype, because you 15 years, right? Like, it's funny, like in a normal grieving, when someone dies, like everyone's there usually for the first 3 months, and then after 3 months, it's a dramatic drop off in people being there to support them. But that's when they need them the most, right?
Actually, it's 20 years. I fucking forgot how old I was.
20. You underselling your age here,
dude? It's August, October 2021 is coming up in a couple of weeks. That's 20 fucking years.
20 years, 2001. Wow. I'm still stuck. I still kind of feel like it's the 2000s. Like I feel like my mind is just stuck there.
I said 15 years 10 times. I stopped to do the math. It's 20 motherfucking years. It's 2 decades, kids.
That's a long time. But look at them now. Drinking water, sitting in front of a fish. Got a microphone.
I feel good, man. Swimming with the fishes every day.
Got traps for days.
Yeah, dude. So that was the beginning of the, after step 5, step 6 was twice a day in the gym, death metal, gangster rap, and just fucking taking it all. Yeah, my own therapy. Yeah, iron therapy.
Yeah, there you go.
And got very out of balance in a yang sense, but it all worked out. My pendulum has swung so many times, and I'm really finding a nice homeostasis and balance and equilibrium.
I think it's good for people to hear that the pendulum is not just like it's here, then it goes back to here. It's like it's going to do this, dude, right?
I'll swing it.
And as you swing back and forth, like each time you pass through the middle is a moment where you get awareness of something, and then you move out of balance potentially, but then you only move out of balance to come back into balance. That's another thing you got to become aware of. So like across those 15 now 20 years, like you've had, I'm guessing, like I'm just putting words in your mouth, but like I'm guessing just based on how much I know you, like dozens of moments of just like building clarity, self-awareness on top of each other, right? Because we talked about too, like a coping mechanism for a lot of stuff. Like you turn to like a positive coping mechanism with like fitness, which ended up becoming like a gateway to like not being a coping mechanism, but just a mechanism, an entirely new structure of living, right? But it took the process, all that before. But when you're in that, like you said, with the kids,
you can't be like, kids, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah, you're gonna get through this. You're gonna like like kind of down, because then now I'm just downplaying the whole process that we've both been through. Then you said too is like you're grateful for it because you understand the purpose behind it. Hindsight's 2020, right? 2020 pun intended. There you go.
Yeah.
But
for sure. The what was I gonna say? The kids just are they more comfortable in the group setting talking to their peers about like communal loss and collective?
That I don't know, because again, like I just did the first day.
First
time, and again, it was like kind of an icebreaker day, just kind of getting to know everybody, getting them to know us and feel comfortable around us.
Yeah, maybe that was my question. Did they become comfortable when the icebreaker started, as far as just conversation? Because let's pretend there was no loss. If you get 3 teenagers that never met each other in a room, it can be awkward, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Did they get past the awkward stage?
Yeah, I think so. It felt pretty comfortable. I'm pretty good with teens. Like I said, because like they're old enough to kind of like appreciate like my wit and cleverness a little bit, course. But I'm still old enough for them that I can kind of catch them with like some stuff.
You're at the perfect spot, bro. That's the
whereas like the younger kids, like they don't get some of the stuff I'm saying, so it's like, okay, well, I know, like I would have to approach you in a different way, which is
some kid gloves. Somebody else. But when you're a teenager and you drop like a movie line on them or something like that, they're like,
yeah. This whole the first thing, like cool. One of the first things is like, can we curse in here? I'm like, if you're all cool with it, yeah, one masked,
That's which awesome.
Some kid is not comfortable with it. We want to set like universal grounds, but like everybody's cool with it. That's cool.
Yeah, do whatever the fuck you want. Don't block your throat chakra, son. I don't know what to call a girl, but son. Ma'am.
Daughter? What? That feels weird now.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I wasn't gonna go there. And then my brain went to sis, and that's ridiculous.
Isn't that funny how that works? Like you can son is like kind of like an acceptable thing, but like the alternative daughter is like real weird. Like this is weird saying that, you know?
Language.
Like, words. Come on, son. Like you wouldn't say like you wouldn't have.
No.
Like, come on, daughter. Like
right? You think they say that a WNBA women's basketball coach
Definitely
says that?
Not. No, it's so weird.
Come on, son. So what else was I say? You mentioned the wounded healer. That is the only true healer. Because like I said, you can read a bunch of shit in the book, and all you're gonna get is the guy sitting on the couch that my 19-year-old self was yelling at and angry and lashing out at for no reason. Is because they have a degree. I was like, bro, I see your degree on the wall, but you ain't never been through shit. And he was like, no, I haven't, but I am educated at this university. Blah blah blah. I was like, bro, I don't give a fuck about your university. You don't know what I'm feeling like here. And I just went off on him. And once again, that was just the only way that I knew how to deal with shit. But the way I handled it was wrong. I think is what I'm trying to say. The way I handled it was completely wrong. But on paper, I wasn't wrong, meaning the true healer is the wounded healer because they have compassion and empathy built in because they've been there.
Yeah. So
which kind of makes you qualified for this job. Not only your wit, your intelligence, your patience, and I could go on, but your empathy and experience and compassion.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible for somebody to be in that role without having gone through stuff? Because say you're working with somebody who's been through the worst possible, like say Viktor Frankl comes in, right? Or a Holocaust survivor comes in. And like maybe you've been through some shit, like, you know, like you lost somebody, but then like how do you, is that
where do you draw
necessarily a prerequisite?
Yeah, no, you know me. Nobody wins any medals in the oppression Olympics because you can't compare anything to anything. But if this was really a white bread rich motherfucker that really never been through shit.
But is it possible to have like say you go through like a spiritual awakening, but you've never gone through any kind of loss, like potentially you go through the loss of an ego or something like that? Is that?
Oh yeah, you got to just have something, and most people do. But there are some people that don't, and I don't think that they qualify as a healer whatsoever. But yeah, no, you never compare like, oh, I've been through more, you've been through more. It's kind of just something because I think I've told you the story before. I don't know if I ever told it on the mic. Ed Cohn, who's the greatest American powerlifter of all time, maybe the best powerlifter of all time, he deadlifted 901 weighing 198 pounds, right? So that was the world record at the time. And it was insane. That's absolutely insane. And he was doing a seminar, and the fucking kid raises his hand and he said, how did that feel to deadlift 900 pounds weighing only 198 pounds? And Ed answers the kid with a question of his own. He goes, how much is your maximum deadlift? And the kid said 500. He goes, it felt like that. You're 500 because it was your maximum effort. So that's all we can compare to is whatever you've been through, that's the worst. And I've been through it, it's the worst. That energy is the same. There's no linear comparison on paper. So, but the wounded healer, like I said, has a whole toolbox. And the first tool, you know, a golf club of different clubs they pull out. And the first club is always safe space and empathy before, like you said, you go in fixing things.
Yeah. So when I did my training, it was very, very interesting because part of the training was like all of us, maybe like 16 of us that went through the training. We all did this activity where we talked about our own personal stories of kind of loss. And there was like a dramatic spectrum.
Of course.
And there was one person in particular too, who I thought was really interesting because they ended up being probably one of the more well-spoken and kind of like better observance. They hadn't really gone through much. And I remember them saying it was like, when it came to them, it's like, I feel this is kind of odd for me because like I'm hearing everybody else and there's some crazy stories, like some crazy stories of loss and trauma and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I feel weird that I've never really had that, like any kind of experiences like that. So I really don't know how to relate. But he's somebody who's like, you know, follow Marcus Aurelius, follow like spirituality and stuff like that. So like my point is because there are some people who've gone through crazy stuff, but they really, in my opinion, didn't really seem to be that great at being able to manage it because they were bringing a lot of their own stuff into it. So I think the biggest trait that I observed, at least in my training, was like just to be able to be to be a mirror, right?
Of
Because like you
course.
almost don't even want to be there, but you want to be able to
No,
understand how to be there, I guess,
of
rather.
course. Yep, that totally makes sense. So then let me reframe what I'm saying. Then it's more about how far along on the journey you are.
Yeah.
So a small to no, minimal adversity, but you're putting in a lot of work versus, oh my God, all this happened to me, but I'm only so far into the work. And once
Yeah, it's
again,
kind of like
not
you could
linear
go
process.
yeah, you could have like a near death experience
Oh yeah.
at 35 that triggers something, or you could be into on the path of 18 and it takes you 17 years and you get the same spot, right?
Right.
So
That's
there's
exactly what I'm trying
definitely
to say.
different ways to get there. um, I think to your point though, like the actual experiences of those losses and is not the worst, but it's definitely faster, but the more rockier road to get there, if that makes sense, because it's
Sure.
like it's like boom, whereas like Terrence McKenna always says, it's like you could meditate and sit in the cave for however many years, or you could take 5 grams and lose your ego entirely and have that experience, right? Or you could have like a near death experience or something like that crazy that happens in your life. That's definitely the faster way. I think that
So
also
that's what you're saying is next time you go with these 3 teenage girls, you're going to bring a bag of mushrooms and just
basically, yeah.
cut the lights out, turn on Pink Floyd, and pass
Okay,
the key
kids,
around.
this is how you're going to deal with this process.
You
Don't tell
guys
your
want to
parents.
fucking sit here for 30 years and talk about your bullshit? Or do you want to drink?
Or
Or
do
do
you
you
want
want
to
to
live
drink?
30 years in the next hour or so?
Yeah. And clearly I'm joking because I exaggerated both of those things, but let's not put a joke on the benefit
If it's
of psychedelic medicines, not in this setting because it's not legal or registered, and fuck legal. That's a whole separate thing. And I'm not even saying that they're too young, but point is the set and setting is not appropriate.
yeah,
But you and I both have used those medicines as a part of it, not only the books and the work and the meditation and the exercise and the nutrition and the helping and the giving back and the volunteering and the journaling and the this and the that, but the medicines help quite a bit.
yeah. We both did it at both of the first times we did it in the spiritual sense were very pivotal, right, for both of us on that healing journey. Pivotal. And if you like, and a really good point that you mentioned too, because we were joking around about mushrooms and Pink Floyd, which is what most people think about, because you remember like it's also a Schedule 1 drug, which is just a label, which is just a category, which the government put something in. But if you're looking at any of the research that's coming out of like Berkeley or Johns Hopkins and the MAPS and all of the like, it's more effective than any kind of SSRI or any kind of thing.
Number one,
it's extremely dramatic, right?
assisted with therapy. So not only setting and dosage is taken care of,
but you're working
and the
with
headphones they put on you, and you're comfortable physically, mentally, emotionally. But then the therapist who has done their own sitting on the couch under the medicine with the medicine is now sitting with you and not only guiding you like a shaman, but at the appropriate moments doing their therapy work when the layers of conditioning and ego have been a little bit melted away.
The onions start to peel off. That's one where I agree with you, where if you're going to be in a situation where you're facilitating that's something I feel like you would need to have done. You need to have gone through that.
Yes, Rick Doblin, when he's now in the midst of doing a lot of legalization and work with MDMA assisted psychotherapy. All their therapists have to go through it, and every single one of them, 100% of them, also have a regular practice, and it's the same. They're like, why the fuck am I sitting on a couch with someone sober when I know that I have a magical potion that I can still do all my work and get 10 times better results, 100 times better results.
Yeah.
So it's so funny. He doesn't want to use it as a crutch, but he says every time they go back to non-MDMA assisted therapy, they're like, oh, I could do so much of a better job once it's legalized. And not to talk too much into the future, but he says by 2050, it's going to be legal, like over the counter legal, like, whatever Zoloft, whatever
prescription.
Instead of SSRIs, you will be taking
get a prescription,
psilocybin and MDMA.
Yeah, you go to your.
He says by 2050, and he can project that because he has the wheels turning on both branches of the corrupt tree that is American legislation, but he's also super deep into the UK and like all. I just was listening to him on Aubrey. He's really got wheels turning.
Yeah.
not only in the underground realm, which he has dealt with for decades, and then in the trial and legit psychotherapy realm and under universities, but now nationwide and other countries as well, Australia and UK, complete legalization.
Yeah, no, it's like the hippie generation is what people think of like psychedelic, and for better or for worse, because there was a lot of just
Sure.
nonsense thrown in there, and there's a lot of propaganda thrown in about the hippies, whatever. And
On both sides.
Timothy Leary is like famous for saying all they got to do is put LSD in the water, and there would be a better world. And it sounds like a ridiculous statement, but like if you've ever gone through any kind of these spiritual healings, you know how
I thought
powerful.
I was famous for saying that.
You still have your chance.
I remember so many times I was like, all we got to do is put psilocybin in the water supply. And you were like, well, we'd have to set a date. We'd have to get so many people to not drink the water to be sitters.
Yeah, right. We'd have to coordinate worldwide.
You were like coordinating the logistics of it. And I was like, Leary and
it would literally be like the opposite of like the purge. Like, they have like, we have one day where everybody gets to go nuts. It's like, we have one day where everyone's just going to sit for,
that's a better
2 days. 2 days maybe. It's like half the country is going to sit for the other half of the country, and then
that's what we do. Last names from A to fucking Q go on the first day, and then the rest go on the second day, and then you're the fucking sitter for your neighbor with different license plate number, like they used to do to gas in the 70s.
Bring it back to grief real quick. Did you have something to say, or because I'm switching the topic?
I was just going to say it's the opposite. You had a better analogy. I was going to say it's the opposite of the slow drip of fluoride in the water. Instead of slowly poisoning people and calcifying their pineal gland and putting them deeper to sleep, we slowly wake them up with a psilocybin micro drip. But your analogy was better. So going back to grief.
Yeah, so because now we've brought up the psychedelic experience. And again, it's obviously a condensed experience. We've mentioned ego death before and all that go. What would you kind of describe the process of grief during a psychedelic experience? Because there is loss during a psychedelic experience, and that's a wholly different type of grief than say like a 3-dimensional, you lose somebody, you lose a job, you lose a house or whatever like that. It's very, very different, right? But it's still grief.
I can't believe you're hitting me with this fucking big one when we only got 5 minutes left to fucking wrap it up. So there's waves that come, and those first 5 steps get thrown out the window. And then there's waves of you're then connecting physically, emotionally, through sight, sound, and feel with people that you have lost. So now you're crying in like I thought I would never see you again, but now we're making an even deeper connection type of thing. And then I think what you were going to is a lot of times you lose yourself, meaning your ego dies. Sometimes even your body dies, and you're just your soul or spirit or light body. And you realize you're like, oh, this human mammal vehicle that I'm in is only temporary, and it's not who I am. And it's just a vehicle for awakening and some cool operating avatar system that I can use during this third density 3-dimensional experience. And you have to really let that go. Because I honestly think 99% of bad trips, quote unquote, are people not letting go of their ego. Yeah, holding on to too much attachment.
I agree.
They're like, I am my body, I am my ego. It's dying, it's slipping away. Oh my God, I'm dying. And now they're believing all these rambling stories again. But like I said, once you've practiced meditation enough and you know how to let go, you kind of embrace that death experience. And then you have like a unity experience of there is no up, down, left, right, day, night, sometimes no male, female, certainly no time. And it's just nothing but love and like a God omnipresence type of experience, and a uni omniverse consciousness type of experience. So if you know how to let go, I forget what your question was because I'm rambling now. If you know how to let go, you can embrace that type of death. But that's why the medicine needs to either be therapist, shaman, or super experienced people helping you out with it, because you really a lot of times feel like you are dying. Because if you think you are your ego and it dies,
your identity, your name, your what you did, who you are, the color of your skin, your body,
all
your
that's
height,
gone.
Yeah.
Now what, motherfucker? It's just you and sacred geometry and brilliant colors and waves of love and light coming at you.
Yeah, and I think, well, the question was grief during that process, but like you said, like it's like a you go through this kind of death of experience, right? And because you go through a death and a loss, like you said, in kind of like a super condensed experience, you also go through the process kind of grieving your old self. Like I remember the first time it hit me in a really deep way. I was crying because I was grieving the person. I
Oh
saw all
yeah,
myself flashing before my eyes, and I was able to kind of process that in a different way, grieve in
you
a
have
way I
to.
hadn't before.
But that's how you move forward to a new you and a new chapters. The old John has to die,
Yeah,
like the a butterfly metamorphosis or a snake shedding his skin type of situation.
yeah. And you understand, like, and bringing a full circuit here, like that the grief is good. That grief was like as much important as the ego death experience was. It was the grief over that allowed me to process what was gone and what was now there remaining. Um, oh, one of the ladies had a really good quote last night,
You know I
relating
love
to.
quotes.
Yeah, well,
Say it out loud that it's going to come back to you. And it was
yeah,
a
I'm doing that
woman.
Alan Watts. Like, it's in there. It's somewhere in there.
Well, it's going to come back to you. I know it
I
because
remember now.
works
So,
every time.
like in terms of, because she was talking to us as facilitators, but and this is relating to self care, right? But really, essentially, self care is a lot of stuff, not just taking care of yourself physically, like, so like the journal of meditation, but also going through, like we just talked about, the grief process, the acceptance, the letting go of everything that's going on. And what that allows you to do is kind of give the best of you and not what's left of you, I think was what she said, because a lot of times you get so exhausted. If you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not doing the work yourself, you're just really giving whatever's left of you after you've been chipping away, but giving the best of you, right?
That's a
Um,
writer downer.
yeah. Yes, it is.
Give the
Grief
best
is
of
good,
you,
everybody.
not
Grief is super
what's
good.
not what's left of you, or
Yeah.
not the rest of you.
You can look it up. There's probably actually a better version of saying it, but the idea is there, right?
I like it. That's true. That's what you want to do with everything is show up, wake up, grow up, show up, and then work on your shit so that you can give the best version of yourself, not just whatever's the rest left over. I love it because you're
Yeah.
more than that and you're better than that. So hopefully this opened up a lot of people's eyes as far as how awesome you are and inspiring people to give back and do more, charity and volunteering type of work. And that you're never alone. And if you're depressed and grieving, you're a fucking son of a bitch if you don't message one of us or reach out to somebody. All right. And we're all going to make it and we're all in this together. And we will see you guys next time. I love you all.
Peace.